Having a mandate to create industry, the government feared photos revealing environmental abuse would hamper economic growth. But it was stories such as this which forced them to act, as the public demanded enactment of environmental standards. Not visible from the ground, this aerial news footage shows a large pocket of treated human waste from Toronto's main sewage treatment plant, which is not dispersing.
Well, when I flew over here, I was like, geez, this is where I live, right there. I could see it, and I could see that, what we could see throughout the whole day was the sewage coming out of the outfall, which is right over there, and generally just flowing back right into the beaches.
Living beside all this water and not being able to swim in it angers Anna Gracey and her husband, who live in the beaches area of Toronto. Preparing her own Skywatch evidence, Anna addresses her concerns to an environmental meeting.
I've lived north of
She knows this is only the start in a long struggle.
Operation Skywatch pilot. It is frustrating because of the bureaucracy in all governments, and they don't move very fast, and there's got to be a political will, so it's got to be coming from the public that we want to clean this stuff up.
They started to send Ron and some of the other technicians along with one of the 99s, and we started to do specific missions.
And it was time for the ministry to pay for the aircraft rental, and the 99s provided pilots, volunteered to us.
Every year, Ron arranged to have a press conference, so there was a lot of exposure, which was very good for the 99s. We became a credible flying club.
Flying Skywatch and learning about what to look for in the ways of pollution was really very easy for us to gather the concept. It was a little more difficult to spot pollution because normally you see sparkling waters and beautiful fields, and this is what you really want to see.
Johnson had to teach the pilots to look for the little things: groups of dead trees, tire tracks, water discoloration, changing landscapes.
We sometimes get to the dead end of a road and we see a circle of black. It's quite obvious from observation that a tanker might have been there the night before, opened a valve and went around the circles. We have found some tankers buried in old gravel pits full of chemicals.
On the water, you can see the discoloration, and occasionally we've been able to follow the line of discoloration, maybe up a creek, and see a factory miles away that's leaching into the creek.
What was good for the ministry was also good for the 99s. Now flying a plane provided by the government meant that the women could log all important flying hours free of charge to improve their ratings, and at the same time fulfill the volunteer mandate of the organization. And there was lots of flying to do. However, the most dangerous polluters are smart, and the results of their dumping and the evidence of their illegal activities only becomes traceable after months or even years of comparing photographic evidence. Flying carefully plotted paths at constant speed and altitude, even when banking, required the pilots to quickly attain the skills of more experienced flyers.
Ron, who's usually our photographer, he'll just motion with his finger, okay, right turn, prepare for right turn now. Left turn, straight and level. Okay, right turn, and it'll be this quick. So you're low level, and 1 minute you're doing this, and you're going like this, and all of a sudden it's like this, and all of a sudden it's straight now. It's right. You don't have time to think. It's just right on call.
Now, having knowledge, the pilots didn't wait for a mission to use their Skywatch eyes. The pollution fighters, armed with cameras, sought out suspicious areas. The concerns of Adele and Daphne took them to Woodbine Racetrack, located in an industrial area of Toronto.
Well, you're always worried about the horses, and it seems in the past years things have been getting worse, and you get a noticeable upswing in horses that bleed internally while they're racing, and even in training, which we never used to get.
Well, basically what we've noticed is, especially when the wind is blowing this way towards the racetrack, we'll be galloping around and you can hardly breathe when you get up to the top turn there. The horses would be sensitive to the pollution because they need to breathe clean air just like any athlete would.
While Adele flies, Daphne, who is also an atmospheric chemist, gathers air samples.
In science, anytime you get numbers, then it helps. And from an airplane, you can get numbers you can't get on the ground.
And we'd like to know what it is. I mean, to know what it is and to know that either if it was harmful or if it wasn't harmful or whatever. I mean, we certainly don't want to wait till it's too late.
Because they weren't permitted to fly below 1,000 feet, the results were inconclusive. The full impact of emissions have never been recorded by ministry officials, either from the air or at ground level. The pollution and the bleeding continue.
When I got up there and I learned how to look for the things that I was looking for, I don't think 2 or 3 minutes would go by in flight before we'd find another dump site. Illegal dump sites all over the place.
Due to public pressure and the mounting number of cases, the Ministry of the Environment formed the Investigations and Enforcement Branch in 1985. Working with technicians and former police officers, the women would now fly specifically assigned missions. But along with this partnership came government insurance regulations. They demanded that each pilot must have logged 500 hours. For Skywatch pilots who had set their own standards and flown for 7 years without incident, this rule would eliminate some of the flyers and threaten the program's existence.
A lot of our pilots had 200 or 250 hours that came out of flight school, so they were very well qualified. They had commercial license, multi-engine ratings, instrument ratings. They were better qualified than a lot of people with 500 or 1,000 hours. So when the government required that we have a base of 500 hours, we really fought for these women because we really wanted them to be able to get their hours flying, to be able to fly with Operation Skywatch.
Then we were no longer just doing this for fun with another friend. We had to make sure that the pilots that were flying the missions were very, very capable. We had the responsibility of other people on our hands.
So we compromised. We said, we'll settle for 300 hours. So I went back to the 99s and said, guess what? We've got Operation Skywatch operating again. And they said, well, now wait a minute. What if there's some liability to the 99s? And we said, oh no, here we go again.
These problems caused a close down for nearly a year, until 1986, when Operation Skywatch became officially airborne. Averaging 200 flights a year, 17 pilots worked on a rotation system, and it was not long before their mission showed concrete results, one of which came uncomfortably close to home.
I was flying one of the technicians over 5 Mile Creek, and they took pictures of one area. I found out afterwards it was my husband's plant. He was fined $25,000, and that really didn't sit very, very kindly with him.
Prior to 1986, the pilot's job was to detect pollution. Now, with the investigators on board, they were to obtain visual evidence to catch environmental offenders, some of whom are very sneaky.
That's what part of environmental crime is all about, is that where there is a law and these people are expected to get rid of their waste and they don't know where to go and they can't see their way to pay the prices that are involved to dispose of their waste, they'll get rid of it in any way they possibly can.
The storing, recycling, and neutralization of hazardous waste material is big business. If not properly handled, these products can cause far-reaching damage to the ecology of a whole region. And unfortunately, by the time damage is visible, it is often too late. Sometimes a lead would arrive from an unlikely source.
We started making some anonymous phone calls to the Ministry of the Environment. By anonymous, although we did not identify ourselves, we were very, very specific as to what was going on inside the fence or the walls of Varnicolor Chemical. We were very specific as to the number of spills, the dates of the spills, the chemicals that were spilled, the quantities. We expressed concern to the ministry that it was, in my opinion, an extremely sloppy operation.
For over 150 years, Mennonites have been farming some of the richest agricultural land surrounding the small town of Elmira. A recent influx of industry had been welcomed as a great economic boost to the area, but what happened was unexpected and frightening. It was discovered that local wells had been contaminated with toxic chemicals. People were forced to pick up their drinking water from municipal supplies. Following this scare, which is yet to be resolved, another source of contamination was revealed.
If you're spilling 100 gallons of solvents, for example, onto the ground, and you only clean up 35 gallons, well, there's 65 gallons that have either gone up into the air or down into the ground, or both.
Alan Marshall, who grew up in Elmira, was soon to be fired from his position at Varnicolor Chemical Limited for revealing the mishandling of hazardous waste at the company's storage facilities.
Okay, that's about 60
Julie
miles.
McGuire, a mother of 3 girls who lived in the area, worked with Johnson on what was to become one of Operation Skywatch's biggest cases.
Is this particular one?
Remember when we first came over, we were doing this plant as well.
Yes.
All of a sudden, you start building a profile over time of what the site looks like. If we flew over a site today that had a lot of lagoons on it years ago, we'd probably see that it was nothing but green grass. But when we go back to the archival files and we can superimpose all those sites that were there years on, so that we're able to pick up that print and give it to the investigator, and they could go right out to the scene and with the inches come up with something that was there before.
The target was a toxic waste disposal facility owned by Varnicolor Chemical Limited. A check on conditions in that area indicated perfect weather for the mission. Varnicolor had been regularly photographed by Skywatch. This flight would reveal if conditions at the location had changed.
Whatever the case may be, we plan accordingly, and then we jump on the airplane and rig up all our intercom and all our cameras, and off we go into the sunset. Safety has always been my major goal. Canada is a huge, immense country, and we do cover a lot of areas. And it's very important that we look at our flying with a sense of safety, not only for our own life, but for the life of the photographers that we carry with us and our investigators.
Mike Hotel Uniform, clear for takeoff, 3-3.
Mike Hotel Uniform, clear to take off.
As I started flying with the 99s, I found that they were a special breed of pilots, that it was a real fine-tuned, trained organization that was just special from others who have flown with before.
It's a lot of reported barrels and drums that might have been added or subtracted to the site.
We work as a team, and we communicate back and forth as to what we're doing. The pilot can't see what I can see on the ground, and I'm more or less guiding them, and the communication is there, and it starts to build, and it's a great feeling.
Let me just slow down a little tiny bit.
There's a lot of tight flying, a lot of just saying right, and Julie just whips that around right, and when we're doing that type of work, it's a very tight communication and very quick action on the pilot's point of view.
With the information from Alan Marshall, they knew exactly what to look for.
You see all those vertical drums there, just this side of the water tower right in here, all the barrels? That's the site.
Okay.
Hello?
And I'll just keep
Julie's
turning
flying
right.
skills took Johnson's cameras right over the target to collect evidence not available from the ground.
Easy right turn. Just keep coming around. Right turn. We're right on top, and if he's on top of us, he's got the sight right below us.
Yep.
Looking good.
We were able to fly with some telephoto lenses so that we could actually count the barrels and drums and how they were stacked, and different things that had changed. And I think this is the important thing, showing the changes that the company